Well, the old saying is like people won't remember what you said to them, but they'll remember the way you made them feel. And so, process is the same thing. The experience that they have is going to be wrapped around what your process looks like. And so we always want people walking away or feeling like, hey, that was a wonderful transaction. Like, I'm not scared of mortgages. And I also feel like that leads to success because if people remember that experience, they're going to remember you for the next transaction and the transaction after that.
Welcome back to Good Better Broker as we bring in Justin Kelly. He is the CEO and a senior mortgage loan originator with CPF Mortgage in Tampa, Florida. Justin, great to have you here.
Yeah, thank you. I'm humbled to be here. Happy to share.
Big day for you. You received the Dominate Award in the weekly sales huddle earlier this morning, and you were saying it completely caught you off guard, which is always the best way to do it.
Yeah, it definitely caught me off guard. Wish I was wearing a full suit. At least I had the sport coat on, so felt good about that. But yeah, it was awesome to get that. I have a bunch of people here with me, so I've been getting messages all day, congratulating me. So it's nice to be recognized. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you and your partnership. You've been with us for some time, Justin, and you actually started in mortgages before you were even out of high school. What was that like?
I'll tell you, the first day I started, I had finished high school early. So I did independent studies, got ahead, and, I showed up the first day and just sat down in front of the owner of the company and said, okay, explain what a mortgage is to me. And my first day, I got somebody on the phone. I was able to actually get a deal. And it's all history from there. It was just it was love at first sight, and I actually kind of diverted from what I was going to do in life after that day, and the rest is history.
I feel like I need to revisit something you just said.
Yep.
Your first call, you got a deal.
Yep.
As a teenager.
Yeah. Yeah, 17. And back then you just, licensing and all that worked differently. You worked under the correspondence license that you were working for. And so it was awesome. And from that point forward, every month I would double my production. And so by the time I was 18, 19, I was old hat and, doing quite a few deals and actually managing a company. And so I realized that I really needed to focus and learn the business before I did any type of management. So I took a step back and really tried to understand the business and become an expert at every facet of it.
What did you love about the business back then when you first started to kind of wrap your hands around it and figure out what the mortgage industry was all about?
Yeah, I just love the process and how everything worked. The financial side, being able to go into work and, dress nice and, just interacting with people on a high level where they're doing the biggest transaction of their life. It just really appealed to me.
Your company, CPF Mortgage, there is a meaning behind the name of the company. Tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually started the company as Christopher Paul Financial. So Christopher Paul Kelly is my brother. He passed away at a younger age, and so he was a Marine, served locally in the police force, and so he loved serving his community, and I thought who better to name the company after than him. So we started having a lot of success. And, people were calling us for all types of things with the name Christopher Paul Financial. Hey, can we invest our money? Can we get a car loan, get a credit card through you? And so I started realizing that doesn't relay what we do to the community. But I struggled, with changing the name. And so one day my wife said, why don't you just take the acronym CPF and add mortgage on the end? And so that's how CPF was born.
Really cool, and what a great way to honor your brother's memory. You were talking about some of the success that you experienced with people calling you about getting loans for various things outside of mortgages. You were telling me when we talked before the episode that things really started to click when you established a solid reputation in your community.
Yeah.
How did you do that, Justin?
Well, when I started, it was at the end of 2007, going into what is now known or referred to as the meltdown of 2008. And so I looked for the opportunities in that market. And specifically, a lot of people were hurting at that time. And so I was kind of perusing through, determining what's the strategy, how can we help the community? And I realized that, flowing with streamlined refinances and, all we needed was somebody that paid their mortgage on time, 12 months. We didn't need an appraisal. So I was able to help people get quick, fast relief in a time where there was a lot of turmoil going on. And so we did that for the first 24 months as our main source of business. And, people just really appreciated our speed, the way we were able to help them in that tough time.
You were telling me that brand and reputation come from the process that you guys have. Why do you feel that way?
Well, the old saying is like, people won't remember what you said to them, but they'll remember the way you made them feel. And so, process is the same thing. The experience that they have is going to be wrapped around what your process looks like. And so we always want people walking away or feeling like, hey, that was a wonderful transaction. Like, I'm not scared of mortgages. And I also feel like that leads to success, because if people remember that experience, they're going to remember you for the next transaction and the transaction after that.
Reputation, as they say, it takes a long time to build up.
Yes.
It can take a very short amount of time for it to all come crashing down.
That is true.
When you think about that, how much has gone into you guys building up your brand? How much does that impact the way that you have kind of structured the company? And we're going to get more into that. But how much do you feel like that has kind of set you up to align things the way that you have with that reputation in mind, and knowing that it is still a very fragile thing?
Yeah, it definitely is. You can build a beautiful reputation over many years, and it can be wrecked very, very quickly. So building the company, I wanted to think about not only the consumer, but also our agent partners and anybody who refers business to us. So, building out a firm, repeatable process was very, very critical for us in our success in that reputation and keeping that reputation intact.
Let's talk more about that, because you were telling me that you were grinding it out in your 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
What did that teach you, and how did that lead you to that epiphany that you had about the importance of a repeatable and scalable process?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's, grinding through your 20s and 30s, there's especially in the mortgage industry, you're kind of finding yourself, you're discovering your business, and you're trying new things. And I realized very early, it's like, I have to find a process that's repeatable so that I can scale the business. And so, kind of trudging back through the years and looking at how things were operating and working within the business, I kind of broke the process down into several gateways, if you will. And so we trained for those specific gateways, hired people, and put them in place so that way we could scale the business and maintain the reputation when you add volume to it.
It's funny how like small moments in time sometimes can have a big impact on the way that you think about long-term changes. There was a moment like this for you, and it was the moment that made you say, this needs to happen. Tell me about that.
Yeah, it was, I remember it clearly. It was a busy week. We were having a great month, and, we had a couple processors at that time, and we had somebody that needed to go on vacation during one of our busiest periods of time. And it just everything at their desk that was assigned to them stopped during that period of time. And so I had to stop and fill that gap. And so that made me realize I need to think about this differently and break the process apart.
So tell us about how you've set it up, because there is a very structured way that you have the business running now. Tell us how it works.
Well, I went to our old friend Henry Ford, with the assembly line.
Very popular
process,
around these parts.
Absolutely. And I thought, well, let me apply that to the mortgage business and my business. And so I looked at how can I break this apart, hire people, train them, and stick them in different pieces and make it work like an assembly line. So we have a validation team, and they have 3 specific gateways that they run through for pre-approvals and for contract validation when somebody goes under contract. I then have a processing team that makes sure that the loan gets through, submitted through, all the way to underwriting, clear to close. And then I have a closing team. So that way, if somebody's out for a day or they go on vacation for a week, there's backstops and there's people there to fill in, and everybody is cross-trained on all facets of their department. So it makes things, move smoothly and predictably.
Why is that so important? Because you were telling me that you want every client and every agent to have the same experience every single time they work with your company. Why is that so important for you?
I think that if you don't have brand like predictability, your reputation is different in your marketplace. And so everybody should think of you the same way when they experience, a process or they send a file to you. They should all think the same way. Like, wow, that was quick. That was easy to work with. The communication was great. Like, the technology that they have is outstanding. And all of it combined is the CPF Mortgage brand.
That ties to a story you were telling me about a text message that you received from a real estate agent about moving up a closing. Something that's not always easy to do, but because of that brand reputation you've built up, it was much easier than it otherwise might have been. Yeah,
for sure. I got the text message, and it was actually a screenshot of, I guess, the email communication that was going on behind the scenes. And they were asking to move the closing up, and there was some pushback going back and forth, and somebody stepped up and said, we actually have no problem. We just looked at who your lender is that's working on this, and we absolutely know that they'll be able to get this done faster than, the scheduled time. So that's huge, and we didn't even know this other party. Like, I don't know them personally. So that just tells me that, our reputation and our brand is acknowledged in our community.
Yeah, I mean, especially like you said, in today's industry where there are so many different forms of communication, text, email, call, DM. Sometimes people want to communicate in different ways. The fact that your reputation was a part of that story has to feel super, super great for you.
Yeah, it definitely is. And you're right. There's so many ways to communicate. Implementing technology throughout the process, I think, is critical to make sure that all the communication points, like, you can only do so much as a human being, right? And when your workload is high and you're doing a lot of volume, having the process broken apart like I do, but then implementing technology in there, it just completely changes the game for us. So
how would you say that segmented aspect of the business has benefited the people who work at CPF? The fact that they know exactly what they're responsible for, and then when they're done, it goes on to the next person, and so on and so forth.
Well, it's huge. You know what I mean? I don't think any one person feels undue pressure if they need to take off work for something that's going on at school for a child, or, they're going on vacation. I know sometimes we can have that guilt in the industry. I'm out of the office. I'm not there with my team. I'm not supporting them. So that alleviates that pressure and that stress by making sure that you have a staff that is aligned and all walking and rowing in the same direction.
This also applies to the way that you are helping your referral partners, and specifically your real estate agents, because this repeatable and scalable process that has benefited your company so much is now helping your referral partners with their businesses. Tell me about that.
Yeah, absolutely. The perfect example is a team that we work with out of our community. When I met them 3 years ago, they had 7 or 8 team members, and we just kind of stepped in and said, hey, listen, there's processes that you need to build out and roles that you need to hire for, much like an assembly line like we set up, but implementing it on the real estate side. And so they've grown to 85 or 90 agents now at this point. It's hard to keep track because they're bringing on 4 to 5 agents a month right now. And it's been wildly successful. And the broker owner actually credits us with all of that growth. And it's just been a tremendous partnership because of that.
What role, Justin, does education play in this? Because this is another thing that you guys have really gone heavy on.
Yeah, it's a huge part. I mean, you want to be branded as the expert, right, in your field. But you got to remember too, like, when you're educating and you're putting things together, you have to think about the agent themselves. What's important to them? A lot of times they don't want to know the intricacies of a loan product or program. They want to know what affects them in their day-to-day. So we look for opportunities where we can train them and help them understand, hey, here's a topic that's really important, we think, for your business. We're going to put on a training seminar. We're going to do it in your office, or we're going to do it at a centralized location where it's easy for everybody to access. And we do that typically either monthly and or quarterly, depending on what we're doing. We also will bring in speakers on certain topics. We did an appraisal panel where we brought a few appraisers in and then set them up on a panel and, like Mike Unplugged, let everybody kind of barrel them with questions. And it was kind of fun to see, all the different responses the appraisers would have. And sometimes they didn't agree and sometimes they did, but it helped the agent understand the thought process behind appraisers. And so we try to think about topics like that that'll impact their business and have them walking away a little more educated than they were before.
As you look back on this, How do you feel about the way your business has evolved and the impact it's had, not just on, the loans you've brought in, but the people who work for you, and also you and the way that you're able to go in every single day and do your job?
Yeah, it's been a tremendous blessing. My team is great. The culture at our company is really good. Everybody cares for one another, and we all, like I said, row in the same direction and all have the same goal in mind. And that's really, it's rare to have that. Buy-in 100% in your company, and I truly believe right now we have 100% buy-in from everybody. So it's been wonderful implementing these processes and doing it, in an assembly line fashion, organized and executing the same way every day. It is a culture in itself, and so it's been absolutely amazing at our firm.
I know that people listening to this and watching us are saying to themselves, "This sounds amazing," but I know it doesn't happen easily. I know that everybody who listens to the podcast sees our guests, and yeah, you're successful, but a lot has to go into that. So tell me about the discipline that is required, not just to build up this approach, but to maintain it every single day.
Yeah, there's a high level of execution that has to happen in any planning in any business. And so when we sit down and we mark out our goals and what we want to do, everybody has responsibility and they understand. I love to take this from Matt: thumb pointers, not finger pointers. And so the discipline behind it is everybody's held accountable for their department and the success within their department, but we all win and we all lose together. So, we have some things set up where, our 5-star reviews that we get, and we've got, several hundred, but we all, I contribute to a little kitty every single 5-star review that we get, and the entire team wins together, and we go out and we do something fun at the end of the quarter. So we're all driven for the success of the company, and walking in that same direction helps us do that.
Man, I mean, you mentioned the assembly line analogy, and it just seems like you guys are firing on all cylinders. So keep up the great work, and we appreciate you joining us. Justin Kelly with CPF Mortgage. Thanks so much for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for watching Good Better Broker and helping us support independent mortgage brokers everywhere. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to be notified about new videos, as well as your preferred podcast platform for a new episode every other Tuesday.